Hello and welcome back to another episode. So we have a very special guest joining us today, and that is Caitlin Hill.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on.
Not a problem. So for those that are listening, we did attempt to do this podcast previously. We had a lot of technical difficulties on both ends, really. My laptop actually broke just before the podcast, and I was like, this is good. So, but we're back. This is going to be an awesome podcast, and Caitlin does look considerably leaner since we did attempt the podcast. So, Caitlin, of course, you're on prep. How is that going for you at the moment?
So, in regards to how this prep has gone as a whole, it has been the most enjoyable and rewarding. I think every single time you prep, I don't know about yourself, but you appreciate prep a lot more. You can compare it to previous preps. I don't know about you, but constantly through the prep, comparing body weight like for like, seeing that you're a shit ton leaner, but posing. Like, I bet if you look at some of your first check-in shots through prep versus, horrendous. You look like I don't even know. You just look shit, basically.
Yeah.
So it's been very enjoyable in a sense that I've got a lot to compare it to, but also it's been very smooth in a sense of the linear progression from peak off-season body weight coming down. We've not had any sort of weeks that it's been like, oh my God, we've gone up. We've not lost weight. It has come down steadily. Don't get me wrong, we've really, really had to push cardio, expenditure, food low, fat burn is high at points. But this is something that I think the whole get food as high as possible. You can diet on so much food. It's been lost. People are so individual these days. And I think now anything that's maybe slightly harsh in regards to an hour on the Stairmaster. Oh my God, an hour on the Stairmaster this far out. Bloody hell, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. A lot of people are very quick to judge these days, I think. And the thing is, a lot of the reasoning behind having to push so hard to get this fat off. One, I do think my age plays a role, but two, my starting point was way too far out, and that is absolutely fine. We do not regret pushing up that hard, because it allowed me to build the muscle. 2019, I looked skinny as hell. This time, again, I was worried, am I going to be big enough? And now actually getting the stage shots back, I'm like, okay, obviously always, you always want more size, but I don't think I looked particularly outsized, if that makes sense.
No.
So I don't regret pushing up that hard. It just meant that we knew going into this prep it was going to be a slog. So, cardio and fat burners and expenditure and low food, it was needed. And I'm still not like peeled. I'd say I'm lean. I'm definitely getting there. Definitely the leanest I've ever been in my life ever. But in regards to the actual linear progress of this prep, it's been very smooth. We've got so many tools to put in. We've not stalled once. And training has been unreal this prep as well in comparison, just loving it a lot. So I guess in answer to your question, that is how prep's gone so far. If there's anything specific you want to know, I'm more than happy to go into it, but it's been very smooth.
Excellent. No, that sounds great. That sounds absolutely really, really cool. And I think it's interesting. You made a couple of interesting points. The one that you have pushed up to gain a lot of muscle, because there still are people that are afraid to push up to a certain extent, and because they think that's going to come at the detriment of getting into condition. But there can be merits for putting on muscle. Obviously, not getting excessively fat. And also, when you said that, we are individuals, there seems to be this sort of stigma where you can't go below 2000 calories, or you can't go above this amount of cardio in you, because
Yeah.
that would be too much, or that's when you're overdoing it. And realistically, you've got to do what you've got to do, essentially, and more people are going to need a lot more. It's like in the off season, some people may require like a stupid amount of calories to just grow, like about 6,000-7,000, where someone could grow like with 2.5 to 3. It is completely different. So obviously there is moderation with that. Like, you shouldn't it's just about using ammo effectively.
Totally. It's something that I would definitely say has a massive merit as well. And I'm going to carry this forward. Stick with a coach, because in my opinion, bodybuilding, let's use the analogy. You've got a notepad. It's completely empty when you start bodybuilding. Straight away, you'll get into the gym, you'll lift weights around, and initially some body parts will grow. My back grew. So we can write in that straight away, back can just grow from anything. Legs don't. So legs is something. And then what else have I learned? Struggles to get in condition. This is something that we know. And now, although we have pushed up to like a really high, it was probably a little bit too far. We know now that is absolutely not needed again. Okay. Like we got up to about 143 pounds, which for a 5 foot frame is pretty high. However, anything above sort of 130, my body just told me to piss off. But this is where one of my downfalls is, and something else that I'm going to write in this bodybuilding notepad. In prep, don't get me wrong, I think the whole hardcore switch off from all emotions is needed. But in off season, when appetite got shit, when pumps weren't amazing, when it was really, really hard to match a set or even progress a rep, I thought, I'm not gonna say to Tom, I'm really struggling with this, because that will make me feel weak. However, that was my body literally telling me, whoa, something's gone wrong here. The appetite going and the lack of pumps was the fact that the food that I was eating was not being used for the right purposes. We should have pulled back then. If I'd have measured my blood glucose, I guarantee on wake it'd have been like 6, which we know is just, that's just not optimal. So I think that's another thing that I've really learned, is that obviously in prep, you can switch off and as shit as you feel, because you are going to feel like that. In off season, we just did not need to push that hard, because when we started this prep, we took about 10 pounds off. Looked 10 pounds off. Are we getting leaner? Literally looked like about a pound. And that, we've written that in the notepad. We know that we don't need to do that again. We've come down. We know that size isn't necessarily an issue now. It's just a case of fine tuning. So going into this off season, it will be the slowest reverse ever because I can't afford to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
That initial bump will be needed for hormones, for training performance, but that full blown had 30 pounds, it's just not needed, because in total I'll probably have dropped about 40 pounds this prep.
Yeah, which is a decent amount. For
my height. Yeah.
I
mean, I was listening to a podcast and AJ was just doing it, and he was saying that a 40 pound prep for him was more than he was happy with. So for me, it's one of them things. And like you say, it's so individual. Like, you got into legit stage condition. So I think that is why you can warrant this massive push up. You pushed up and then you pulled back and then you pushed up again. And now your body composition is unreal for the amount that you've gained. So I think looking at like a model like yourself, that is how it should be done.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and you are right. It is very individual. I think a lot of bodybuilders climbing to the top. They sort of have to take the piss to know where the line is. Essentially,
yeah.
I got to a point where I had to lose 60 pounds to get into stage condition, which was, I was 230 is a natural, and I was 170 on stage, and I was like, wow.
I thought you were going to weigh about 190 on stage as well.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I was going to be heavier, and it's that's another thing. When you are deep into an off season, you're very fluffy. It's very hard to see what how much muscle you've got. And it's also hard to make that decision. Right, okay, this is what we're working with. We're going to be able to bring this standard to the stage. And when you are starting at a leaner composition, that is the benefit. So I suppose there are pros and cons, and whatever is going to be the best approach for the individual is what they can really get away with the best.
Yeah.
Some people will have to keep it tighter in the off season. Probably those who do struggle to get into condition,
Absolutely.
and those, some people can really push it up. I've seen a lot of bodybuilders go like really far and they get absolutely insanely peeled, and I'm like, wow, this is like the Biggest Loser competition. Like, I cannot believe, like, some people are just losing ridiculous life-changing amounts of weight and getting absolutely peeled, and they'll do that every single time, and they've got a decent amount of muscle with that. So I think you're very much right that it is very individual. And I think it's interesting to say that you got to a point in your off season where you were feeling really sluggish and you weren't quite responsive, but you didn't want to tell the coach. And it's kind of a tricky one, because I find bodybuilding is all about moderation, and you could get to a point where you're like, right, I need to just crack on. I don't want to sound like I'm bitching out or anything. But then again, you've got to also know when to pull back and go, right, okay.
Such a fine line, and that is what now, like, that is the biggest thing, that and time. So yeah, just going into this off season, I've already written down so many things that I'm gonna be like 100% on top of. And you'll get to a point in your bodybuilding career, I think, where you will have learned so much that even if you make like a tiny little mistake, that'll be so small that you will be able to bring a look that is spot on. It's just about being able to iron out these mistakes as an amateur, and then eventually you will have built that pro physique.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that going into this off season, I'm definitely going to use body like feedback a lot more. In prep, your body's going to tell you to fuck off all the time, but you do just have to keep going, no matter what, really, unless obviously, like, you're 12 weeks out and you feel like death. Something's probably not going right there, but that's just common sense, really. But yeah, that is something I'm going to work on a lot, is just being able to, I think, just being able to auto-regulate in so many more ways. And that comes with training age and being in the sport longer. Like, someone that's just got into bodybuilding isn't going to know when they're smashed, like, from just training hard for once in their life, compared to feeling smashed because they've finished a block and their body's literally like, right, deload time.
Absolutely, yeah. You become more intuitive the longer you obviously get into this bodybuilding journey. And I think it's very important that people do not shy away from the process. A lot of people will go, I don't want to go on stage until I'm absolutely ready to take everything. And that's not guaranteed. And I think it's always important to go and compete and have experience, because then future preps are just going to run smoother. I don't know what it was like for yourself, but my last prep was a lot easier than the prep before. Yes, there was a different approach, but even when it got quite hard and I was smashed, I was able to handle it a lot better. I was able to rationalize things a lot better. I wasn't really too irritable and taking things out on other people. When it was very new on me, with me, I was like, oh God, I just snapped at that person. It's my first prep. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm hungry. The next one was like, I'm expected to be hungry. I'm expected to feel this way. I feel this way. Cool. I can rationalize it. So you get a better intuition for it. And I don't know if it's the same for you. How have you found this prep in regards in comparison to the other ones?
Okay, so first prep, it was a horrible prep in the sense that I literally prepped for 8 weeks, came in soft as hell. I mean, it was not ideal at all. I didn't have a clue what was going on, but the fact that I wasn't lean, however, I remember feeling snappy and just like I just struggled a lot more. And then the second prep, it was a lot easier because I knew what was expecting. And although this prep, like I've sort of mentioned, we've really had to push hard, it's been a breeze because I've known exactly what it's going to feel like. Doesn't mean it's easy. It's just I've been able to cope with it a lot better. Like routine is so on point that it's like everything is calculated for. Everything in the day has a time, a place, everything, maybe my first prep, let's say I had steps to do. I'd be up until like maybe 10 p.m. doing them, but because I'd have, at the minute, I get up at the same time every day, do steps same time every day. By this time, I can just chill and actually chill. And I think that lack of stress and just being able to, I don't know, plan out my day a lot better and just understand how I'm supposed to feel and accept that has made this prep just, I think my perception is a lot better of it. I probably do feel worse than ever because I'm the leanest I've ever been, but you're able to compartmentalize and be like, right, it's really not that bad. We're choosing to do this. And I guess the thing is that I'm holding on to, I've obviously never been in legit stage condition. This year, we're going to keep dieting. So I've probably got another 4 or 5 weeks of dieting, and I'm hoping by then I actually will be in shape. And if I can really nail this reverse, then that would mean that the next time the starting point should be spot on. And that will then allow you to have a prep where you actually don't need to do all of these things like low food. Everyone wants the high food, low steps, and will follow IFBB pros who are able to do this, but because they've had to put the work in. Like, I think I remember speaking to someone and they used Corinne as an example. In her first few shows, she was doing hours of cardio a day, like no carbs, just protein. And now look at her, she gets in the best shape I've ever seen of any bodybuilder ever. And all she does is drop her food a little bit and move around a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is unreal. And I think if you really love the sport, you'll appreciate that you have to put the work in to then eventually be able to do this. Obviously, there'll be freaks out there that can get away with coming in peeled from the off. But for the most people, and I think a lot of females will probably listen to this if I'm doing this, females, we can't get into stage condition as easy. So we do have to put that work in. It's like racking up your tokens, and then once it's full, we might be able to do a prep on, you know, a shit ton of food, which is cool, but you've got to learn it. I think that's definitely what I've learned through the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100% agree with that. So moving into the off season, obviously prep's not over. Okay, let's start with prep. Actually, what is the goal for this season and what you want out of this season? So you've already done a show. For those that are listening that don't know, you've already done a show. You've won, and you've won your height class. You got prepared in the overall. You know, you looked absolutely excellent. So
thank you, mate.
Where do you want to take this for the rest of the season?
Yeah, so I have just put a post up actually, and at the beginning of this prep, in my phone, I wrote down I wanted to win the junior class. Unfortunately, I was the only one in it. I don't know what I expected. There's no one who's a junior who does figure, but I just thought, I've never done a figure class, let's do it. So I wanted to win that. I really wanted to win my open height class. I didn't really say that out loud, just in case I didn't do it. You know, did that, and the goal then, the main goal was to get onto that overall stage and just be able to get the pictures back so I can look, analyze, tweak. You know, already I can see that they have more maturity than me. Yeah. So with that, what can I do? Time. Just keep showing up year after year and I'll get denser. Size, I could probably do with a little bit more size everywhere. However, I am very happy that I didn't look small compared to them, and very happy with the balance. One thing actually was the tan. My tan was a little bit lighter than the others. So for that, I'm just going to get on the beds, get a better, you know, because stuff like this, when you're trying to actually turn pro, obviously I'm not trying this year, but competing in these federations, it will make a difference. So even the tan and in general condition of my upper, I was pretty happy with. We're pretty much there. It's my lower. So we've taken another 4 pounds off already since Sunday, and we've probably got another 5-ish to go. So the aim, like I say, was to get onto that overall stage and just be able to compare and see how far away I am. Now, I'm 3 weeks out from the Arnold's, which is mega, to be honest. Like, it's the first Arnold's. I'm pretty sure everyone on Instagram that I've spoken to is going. Are you going, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. I was sort of getting the itch to compete this year, and I was like, oh, the first Arnold's, I might try to do that. And I was like, no, I need to do this.
Stick to the original one. You'll benefit more from that. Yeah, so Arnold's will be insane. Don't get me wrong, I am not naive to the fact that it's going to be stacked. There's going to be girls coming from abroad. So I guess this is where I'll say it. If I can even get first call outs, that to me would be mega. So what I'm going to do is just do what I can. I can't grow anymore going into the show. I can't get denser. I can improve my tan. I can improve my posing, and I can improve my condition. So that's what I'm going to do going into that. Maybe another show, but I don't know. However, Arnold's, that is going to happen in 3 weeks today, actually. And then it will be a case of the most controlled reverse diet you'll ever see. But that, like we've spoken about, it's needed for me because I've never been able to get into that sort of condition before. So I'm not gonna mess it up. I'm gonna make the most out of it. But for the rest of the season, that is the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds brilliant. It sounds brilliant. You know, you've already achieved a lot in this season. So I'm guessing that the ultimate goal for you as an amateur is to turn pro. So how long would you go into the off season? Would that be dictated by the results of the Arnolds? Or have you already got a plan in mind?
So in regards to how long this off season will be, it's gonna be a combination of a lot of things. So we'll see how I do at Arnold's. If I continue to come down, do manage to get into condition, but I've lost size at a detriment, then that maybe means I do need to gain maybe five more pounds of pure muscle, which is fine. So we'd be looking at probably, I'd love to say that I could compete this time next year, but I think a more sensible approach, taking a very slow reverse, because if we're thinking about a slow reverse, that's probably going to be another 8 to 10 weeks post show, taking us right to the end of the year. And then if I tried, for 3-4 months to gain 5 pounds of tissue, that would just be unfeasible. So I think maybe one of the very first shows of 2023 would be something that I would look at starting prep this time next year.
Okay.
That would give me, an actual off season to gain size. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to compete again this time next year, as I would love to turn pro at 20. Now that would be cool, but I've gone from wanting everything at once to realizing that a rushed look is just it's not superior at all.
No.
So I think in total honesty with myself, finish this season in October, reverse out by beginning of December. I should be, finally in a good spot body composition wise, but equally not wanting to eat everything in sight. I know that Food Focus is going to be longer because we're going to take it so slow, but that's all right. Even if I'm crying in bed in hunger, that's what I have to do. Okay. It sounds pretty brutal, and most people won't have to do this, but that's why I'm. This is sort of the rationale. I'm still yet to sit down and sort of have a call with Tom about this, but these are the thoughts that I've been having. And then we sort of got January to September, October 2022 to gain size in a very nice, slow, controlled manner, and then start a prep for the shows in 2023. Because I've looked at the Two Bros calendar, and in 2022, so the year coming, they have a couple of regionals right at the beginning of the year and a pro qualifier in the first part of the year. So if I imagine they'll do the exact same thing the year after, it would be that sort of beginning block that I would go for. And by then, I'd like to hope that I would actually have a shot at contending for the pro card.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that.
I think there's a very calculated, well thought out goal. And again, to what you said, wanting everything at once and wanting it very quickly, that is the rationale behind a lot of people trying to get a pro card. They're like, right, I want it at this age, and if I don't get it at this age, it's these sort of don't think sort of calculated about this. How am I going to get that? Due to this amount of progress that I'm making, it should be viable around about this time. I think that's great, because then you're managing your expectations and you are going to be managing your look better as a result of that. Obviously, you know, for those listening that don't know, I don't know if we've mentioned it already on the podcast, but Caitlin is 19 years old, which is crazy, like mind-bending, really, with the physique that she's got at the moment. It's actually fantastic. And with that, there is a lot of eyes drawn on yourself. And, you know, a lot of people have high expectations. A lot of people, you know, are expecting you to go all the way as you are expecting from yourself. You know, me included, I'm expecting, you know, very big things from yourself, because I can see how much you want this, how much you are applying yourself with this, and obviously the results you're getting from that. So my question is, how is that in regards to pressure? Do you feel quite a lot of pressure? Is it very motivating? Yeah, how is that?
Okay, so it was all brought really on in 2019. So I obviously didn't have as big of a following, but I had a little bit of traction going into my shows. And I think the big thing that caused me to feel pressure in the way that I do now, I did a PCA show and just got absolutely destroyed. But that was then when it was like, what am I going to do with this? I didn't place at a sort of, not a low level amateur show, but like not the highest standard, not the lowest standard. And I didn't even place. I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm not a good body, I'm not as good as I thought I was. But then it was like, do I use this as fuel to push on, or do I go, right, that's it, bodybuilding shit, I hate it, you know, the whole sob story you hear all the time as soon as someone does not as well as they wanted to do. So obviously, you know, the next day got on the Stairmaster, and then I had quite a successful season that year. But to this day, the big thing going into this first show was, what if I just rock up, people think she really does not look ready to step on this stage, and don't place again. That to me was like a lot. However, again, it was a case of compartmentalizing. I was like, right, have I done absolutely everything possible to make improvements? Yeah. Have I followed the plan 100%? Yeah. It'll never completely take the pressure off, but I think being able to take a step back, realize that you've done everything that you're supposed to. You can't control who shows up on the day, or, you know, what the judges actually decide. But yeah, that's mainly how I've dealt with it. And I think the weekend just gone has put me at ease a lot, because I'm like, right, okay, I actually belong in this class. So that's taken a lot of the external pressure off. I think more so, and you'll probably have this, I just put a lot of internal pressure on myself. At the end of the day, like, if I hadn't have placed, I'm sure everyone would have still been like, oh my God, babe, she smashed it. And as everyone does, which is lovely. But inside, I'd have beat myself up about it, more so than caring actually what everyone else thought. So yeah, I think you've just got to compartmentalize. If you're doing absolutely everything possible, it's then a case of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It keeps coming back to, if you don't nail it the first time, go back, work on it, come back again, you'll be better. If you get beaten by someone who's simply better than you, cool, come back until you're undeniable. It's as simple as that. It'll be frustrating, because you still will have put all that hard work in, and if you get beat or don't do as well as you wanted, it'll hurt. But yeah, that's how I approach it, with the pressure or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really good rationale. And to be honest, I had a similar mindset going to my last season. I was like, if I don't win the British, you know, I'm not a good bodybuilder, and I don't really belong in bodybuilding. And you know, a lot of people was telling me, it's like, you're going to win the world, not even taking into account the British. I'm like, okay, right, cool, going into this. And I really put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm like, I've got to win this. It's actually not an option. I've got to win it, or else I don't belong with bodybuilding. And that was going to dictate what I was going to do after it. So when I didn't win the British, I had this instant feeling of, wow, okay, the plan didn't work out. I'm not a very good bodybuilder. And I don't know if I've got a career in this. And then I just thought, I'm like, wow, that's a really unhealthy mindset to go in with. Really
Yeah.
unhealthy. It's like this all or nothing mindset. And if I don't get what I want, I'm going to quit forever. And I'm like, what? But the fact of the matter is, I was thinking, what is the alternative? I still love this just as much. I just need to
And
get better.
that is it. That is where I think a lot of burnout comes from. Someone loves it initially, they excel, and then they lose the love for it. Even if I hadn't have done amazingly and you didn't get the title, you got the runner up, you still love it. And because you've still got that love for it, you won't stop, you won't burn out. And I think that is so important. And I can probably speak for both of us when I say that we compete because we love the training. We love the getting up in the morning, going on a walk, coming back, eating a first meal. Like we love the food. We love even just drinking a pre-workout on the way to the gym, writing in your logbook, every single bit of it. If you love that, you're not going to burn out. You're not.
Absolutely not. No. You know, this is like my 8th year of training, and for me, it's only really getting stronger. I'm like, I'm so deep into this, and I actually don't feel like I'm going to burn out, and it's great, you know. And it's actually crazy, and I think it's very important for people to understand that it is about loving the process, not necessarily the destination, but the process getting to the destination. It's not about the show day. The show day is the part of the process, but you've got to be purely in love with the process. And you know, even the depth of prep or the depths of the off season, when it gets hard, you know, you're still in your element and you're still loving it. You're loving the challenge. And people, this is where people get into bodybuilding for the wrong reasons, because they think, the show day, I'm just going to stick with this, stick through it, you know, bear with it, even though it's not enjoyable, because that's what you've got to do for the show day. I'm like, no, I wouldn't do this if I didn't enjoy it, because it would be the shittest thing to do if you didn't enjoy it.
That is translated on stage as well. I've brought it up in a couple of podcasts, but Sarah Bradley, when she stepped on stage, I wasn't even there. I was just watching live streams and just seeing the pictures. Her smile was beaming. You can tell when someone loves this. The approach that I find is so cool for a lot of people who do well is that as soon as you've achieved something, it's like, I feel like I've got so much more to give. I bet you feel like that now. Like you feel like you're not even scratching the surface yet.
Absolutely, yeah. I just want to give more to it, you know?
I feel like I'm still like a little fish in a pond. Like I feel like I've so much more to give, so much more strength to gain, so much more to learn, so much more to be able to nail in regards to composition in off season, and just, you know, how to approach a prep. I think if you constantly strive for wanting more, you know, there's no reason why you won't get more.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, when you enjoy it, you'll constantly want it to be better. You'll constantly want, and This is the thing. If you're also enjoying it, you're just going to have more intent with
Yeah.
the process as well. I remember on my last prep, I was watching a video of Ronnie Coleman training, but I actually watched it with a different perspective, and I saw him and he was like 5 weeks out and he was screaming and he was just loving it and he was happy all day, and he's 5 weeks out and just leaner than the majority of bodybuilders have ever been. And he's just got a smile on his face. I'm like, this guy is truly unbeatable because of that. He's actually dangerous. It's actually scary that this is the hardest part, and he's loving it. He's laughing in the face of it. I'm like, that is why he's unbeatable, because
Someone like that nowadays, that springs to mind, who's always got a grin on his face, Hunter Labrada.
Yeah. Oh,
he's always been win the day.
Yeah.
He's always been. Have you seen one video, or that cheesy smile? Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it does piss me off a little bit because it's so cheesy, but he's loving it. He's peeled out of his mind, but he's still smiling. He probably feels like shit, but because he loves it so much.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. And, again, the results from that just speak for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on, we did touch on this a little bit with the last podcast. So with you being at university and also bodybuilding at the same time, how have you found that? Have you had to be at university much throughout your prep?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll touch on this briefly, just because I've done quite a few podcasts on this, and I don't think people hear me speak about it loads and loads and loads. But I've hit the jackpot. I started prep beginning of May. We finished actual lectures and stuff online, and bearing in mind this was all online, which was more helpful anyway, sort of beginning of June. So at the beginning of June, I was probably still about 12 weeks out. So it wasn't hard really at that point. It was still too easy. And I don't go back in for another 2-3 weeks. So I'll maybe be 1 week out from a show. But at that point, as you know, you're bringing steps down, you're feeding up a little bit. You'll still feel like shit because you're in condition, but when you know that there's 1 week to go, you can do anything. So I've really played it well in that sense, just timing wise, because for the past 10, 12 weeks, I've been able to live like a bodybuilder, who fully lives a bodybuilder's life. James Hollingshead.
Yeah.
And when you see his days in their lives, he can nail absolutely everything to the second, because that's what his life is. I'd be lying if I said that that's not helped. Don't get me wrong, I think I would probably have found this prep so much harder if I had a 9-to-5 job. So I do keep going back and thinking, I'm so grateful that I'm a student at this time, for that reason. But in regards to balance, it's not been hard because I'm at a flat where I've got 3 people that I live with. None of them have moved in. So I've got the place to myself. I can do what I want, when I want, how I want it, which, to have a successful and enjoyable prep, I think you need that sort of environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I was in uni and back in halls and stuff, now I'm not, I definitely think that it'd have been a different story, simply. So if you are in halls in your first year wanting to do a prep, I know that there probably won't be many people. It's not going to be easy at all, and you won't have balance.
Yeah. Absolutely. So obviously, in the off season, when you were at the university, how did you find out with the first year? Because obviously you were 18, 19, going to university, did you participate in the more social side, or were you really, how did you find balancing obviously these high goals that you do have with bodybuilding and also just being someone who's just entering university?
Yeah, totally. So I thought about this quite a lot, because you don't just rock up to uni one day out of the blue. Like, you're going for a good few months prior. My approach was the first week, that is where you make your impressions. It's likely that most people aren't Ronnie Coleman's and, their dreams of the Olympia. 1 week of your life is not going to ruin your progress. However, because I'm quite an extreme person, I still put things in place. So I made sure that if I did go out to drink, I would drink only spirits and 0-calorie mixes, as sad as it was. I mean, gets you fucked easier than beer. I would make sure that it was prior to a rest day so that I could get all the sleep needed. I wouldn't stay out for the sake of staying out till like 3-4 in the morning. So therefore I wouldn't partake in certain recreational, light's gone off, activities for that reason. Let me go turn the light on. Basically, I just acted like an adult, had a great time, and did what I wanted within reason. I love training and I love the gym, so that also goes hand in hand with the fact that I don't love drinking. Don't get me wrong, I had some immense nights that I will never forget, like some of the funniest nights of my life. But at the same time, I was able to, live the whole year doing what I loved, which is ultimately training.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. I know that a few people who have done bodybuilding have really, really struggled at university, because obviously they're like, I don't want to miss out on life. And they've probably got people pressuring them saying, right, come on, this is university. And they're like, they don't want to stay at home and eat the chicken and rice and get the steps in. So, and obviously there is the coursework on top of that to balance with that. So obviously it is, I suppose, a decision at the end of the day. You've got to sort of decide where your priorities are, and you can obviously, you don't have to be fully, you don't have to live like a hermit 100% of the time and not have at least 1 or 2 nights out in the year in university. But then again, it doesn't mean you have to completely disregard your goals and go, right, I'm just going to get pissed every week until I'm out of university.
One of the things that I found was a big one. So nutrition should never be a variable that is sort of not how do I articulate it? Not nailed, because you can simply prepare meals. That's not a laborious, hard task. That's something, wake up an hour before. Everyone in your flat is going to wake up at midday. Wake up at 9, get up, get some water in you, prep your meals for the week, go on a walk, you'll feel amazing. You'll have got all of this done and won't have missed out on anything because they'll still be asleep. So when they're up, you can do absolutely everything. I remember I'd have gotten up, prepped all my meals, maybe even gone trained, got my steps in, had a couple of meals, and they'd have literally just got out of bed. So I'd have been able to do everything a bodybuilder does, but then also the second part of the day, I wouldn't miss out on anything, even if it was, just sitting around doing nothing with the flat. And just, I wasn't missing out on them conversations or, just inside jokes because I'd done everything prior. It's literally just a case of waking up a bit earlier and routine. If your routine slips, then that is your fault, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice, to be fair, for anyone who is listening, watching, who is, in education at the moment, who is a student, and they still want to be obviously on top of the goals, and they still want to have a nice balance with the uni life as well. I think, as Caitlin said, preparation is absolutely key. Just being on top of your shit, really.
Yeah.
So obviously, what age did you actually get into bodybuilding?
Okay, so probably a few answers. I got into the gym at about 13, however. I didn't start my first prep until I was 15, so I'd probably been floating around the gym sort of scene for a couple of years. Just learned to enjoy it more and more. Did my first show at 16. And then I would say that the bodybuilding lifestyle followed immediately after that. Stepped on stage, absolutely fell in love with it. And then with anything in life, as soon as I find a love for it, I obsessed like hell. So that was it. Got onto every single forum I possibly could. Watched so many YouTube videos, probably a lot of shit, to be honest, but just anything that had bodybuilding in the title, just immersed myself in that. So now I'd probably say that I've been bodybuilding and doing everything possible to optimize myself for about 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah, awesome. So with getting into bodybuilding at quite a young age, and there being sort of a stigma around bodybuilding anyway, did you find that people around you supported you, or was there a little bit of controversy with you just falling in love with bodybuilding?
I'd always kept myself to myself, like at school, there's always the popular crowd. I wasn't like that. I just sort of had a couple of friends, kept myself to myself. I don't know. I never really felt the need to go around telling people what I was doing. I just went to the gym, enjoyed it. If there was someone at the gym that maybe went to the same school as me, maybe we'd talk about it, but it wouldn't be like now everything, like basically 90% of my conversations on social media and in person are about bodybuilding, probably like, with yourself. But back then it would just be if someone asked me about it, I'd talk about it, but I didn't really promote the fact that this is what I loved and enjoyed. I just did it because I enjoyed it. So I guess people weren't really bothered because I didn't really project it onto anyone. I think after I'd done my first show, when I was in sixth form, a few people, they had questions or whatever, but you become your own person. I find after year 11, you go into sixth form, you've got a car, you can, drive, you choose to be there when you want. The only time that you would be sort of in that sort of gossipy, just talking for the sake of talking, would be in like a common room at a lunchtime or a break time. And even then, because I've only ever done this in life, is I've only ever spoken and spent time around people that are conducive to my life. Like, if someone's not gonna add to my life, I'll just get rid of them, or I just won't have them in my life. Simple. So I think for that reason, I've never really experienced anything bad to come out of it. Family wise as well, I couldn't ask for better parents. They are so supportive. Probably didn't get it, and they're the type of people that if I was doing something that they didn't like, they would never say that. They might have thought that at first, but now they bloody love it. My mum's at the weekend just gone. She loved it. She was like, "Oh my God, I see that person off Instagram. That person." She like, because she uses my Facebook. Because she's a teacher, she can't have her own Facebook, so she just uses mine. And because obviously I follow a lot of bodybuilders, she's like, oh my God, that's the person off Facebook. They look really good in person. Or she's been like, oh, they don't look as good as their check-ins.
Oh,
like,
that's brilliant.
she's class. She knows all the lingo. I just sent her my stage shots, and she's like, you look really good, but the tan's off. Like she's
Cool.
all. So yeah, I wish I could say that I've got some sort of sob story about how I've had so much, adversity, but I've had a lot of support, and not really anyone, well, not that I've heard, being nasty about it.
Yeah, I think that is brilliant, at the end of the day. Obviously, having what you said, is a strong circle around you, supporting you, is only going to help. And I think obviously making the decisions to cut out people who are counterproductive with that, at the end of the day, you're a product of your environment. And if your environment is just pushing against what you're trying to do, can you really produce the best product that you want to produce, So one thing I do want to speak about, just before we end this, is how did you find the transition from obviously being natural to assisted? How did you find obviously the decision-making process, and how did you find just going through that?
So to me, this is something that I genuinely have been thinking about. Like, obviously I've immersed myself in this industry for like 3.5 years now. From the offset, I've got like consultation calls with people like Joe Jeffrey dating back years. This is something that has been researched a hell of a lot. And to me, stuff like tracking virilization, that is something that I'm so into. I will have calls weekly with my coach for, to make sure that nothing's going weird. I'll have a good circle around me if they ever notice anything, to be like, using stuff like the safer use model, so the least possible to get the most out of it. It's something that I know with my age, a lot of the time people will probably hear and think that is very dangerous, but I don't want to be doing this past the age of like 28, 29.
Okay.
Because I want a family.
Yeah.
I want to leave everything in this sort of 10-year period so that I can then continue training, continue doing what I do, like love to do, but without that competing aspect. I'd like to be able to get to the Olympia in 10 years. I'd like to hope that is viable. And this is probably going to sound quite big-headed, but if I didn't think I had a shot, I would never even think about it. But I think maybe I do. So yeah, that is it. Again, very calculated, very thought through. And I guess that's all I've really got to say.
No, that's brilliant. And I'm really, really glad you said that, because for anyone listening, anyone considering, like anyone, I think that is the best thing to do. Be calculated, do your research. Like you said, you did research long before you actually came to do it. And this is what not a lot of people do. And you're so health conscious and so conscious of any side effects. I think that is the best thing to do. And there seems to be, again, a lot of people, they want to rush the process because they want the goals fast.
Exactly. For example, going into off season, I will not be using anything.
Yeah, which is
because time on versus time off. So I think the total this prep will probably be about 10 weeks. So 10 weeks of the year out of 52. You have something where obviously the longer you are on, the you reach, I think it's called peak androgenicity or something like that. So I'm just gonna use, for the lowest amount of time possible, Obviously, I'm aware that these things will eventually come, but because I want to be in this sport for the next 10 years, to me, that is so important. Obviously, this is specific for female. Obviously, you're not going to go on for 10 weeks for a male and then come off, because it's completely different.
It is.
It's completely different, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, it's a calculated rationale, and there are a lot of people that want to rush it, and then they have, you know, effects where it is going to last for the rest of life, and the physique doesn't really benefit too much in regards to longevity, because there are health issues and they've potentially affected the look of the physique. So I think it is very important to look at this and go, right, this is the game plan for this amount of time. And okay, there may be a way to get to this point quicker, but that's not the best way. And totally. I think that's
with my category, femininity is being rewarded so much more. So that to me is very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very, very clever. And this is what needs to be put out there, you know, to anyone that is listening. Because again, people have this rationale. It's like, I want everything, I want it now, and I don't care about the health. And then when they do care about the health, it's too late. You know, they do care about the things that they should be caring about. It's already past.
Hindsight, beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So an interesting thing with you saying that you wanted to be done by 28 or in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So with, say, if you do get to the Olympia, which I think is more than possible, and you get there and you're like, wow, okay, I can take this even further, and you reach that 10-year mark, is this decision like it will definitively be cut off in 10 years, or will you review in 10 years time and go, this is where I'm at in my bodybuilding journey? And
so obviously nothing's set in stone, but as a provision, I mean, if I get to 28, 29, I don't have a partner, I don't want kids, things can always change, but I would like to be settled down, married, you know, want to have children. That is something that I would want. So, and also my thought process is, if in 10 years I'm not there, it's likely that there will be young genetic freaks who can do it in half the time. And as much as I will keep putting my body through the health risks and just the physical pressures of prep, would it be worth it to keep getting that maybe second call outs? It all depends. It all depends where I am at the time. But that's my rationale. If by that point I'm still trying to eke up an extra one place and being overtaken by new fresh blood, then that's sort of the time when it's like, right, it's your time to stop. I think anyone that manages to get to the Olympia, that's a massive achievement. And if you can crack the top 10, again, that's insane. When it gets to the sort of top 6, that is genuinely down to who the judges prefer. They might simply just like the look of another physique, and you can make all the improvements necessary ever and not crack it. So there would be a lot of decisions and factors that will go into it. But if everything was telling me, look, it's time to stop, then I would.
Yeah.
But till, you know, for now, that's a decade away.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. I just wanted to wonder whether that was like a do or die sort of decision.
Yeah. It's provisional plan.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. So, although this is a decade away, where would you want to take your career with that? So would you make it fitness orientated, or would you go, right, okay, I will still train, and I've done bodybuilding to where I want to take it. Let's pursue something else career wise.
Career wise, what would you do after bodybuilding? I don't know why, but I've always wanted to be a judge.
Okay.
It would mean that I could each weekend still be at bodybuilding shows, but I wouldn't have to do a 20-week prep and kill myself to get there. You know, even if like it, obviously I know IFBB judges for like Two Bros and NPC shows. It's a lot about who you know and what you know. Maybe one day that might be cool. But even a PCA judge, like they get to see some of the best potential in the UK come through. And because I actually love watching bodybuilding and stuff, I'd love to do that. I'd like to also, do a bit of coaching online as well. But at the same time, that if I could do a bit of online coaching, help people, a bit of judging, that would be ideal. That's what I'd love to do. But something that's a little bit off topic is I'd love to be able to buy a house as soon as uni's finished. And as a self-employed person who's young as well, it's very hard to get a house without a job with a stable financial sort of report. So it's likely that I'm going to have to get, a job that is employed by someone, and then maybe one day I can transition. But in that sort of decade away, if I could see myself doing a bit of online coaching, judging at the weekend, that to me would be the dream.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant, actually. Yeah, that would be the dream. Awesome. So it has been absolutely brilliant having you on. There's been such an awesome podcast. I'll definitely have to have you on at some point again. Maybe when you are Miss Olympia. In the next 10 years, of course. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you everyone for listening. You've all been absolutely stellar. Stay tuned until the next one, and I will catch you all later.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.